Welcome to the On the Top Coaching Podcast, where we discuss the new and innovative waves in the sport of swimming. I'm here today with Zach Mertens, Assistant Coach at Drury University, and we are starting/kicking off our hashtag Coaching Through COVID series, where we discuss with college, high school, and club coaches how they intend to overcome the hurdles and obstacles that may be in place during the sport of swimming season in lieu of COVID. Zach, how are you doing today?
I am doing just splendid, Jason. How are you?
I'm fantastic. So we're going to ask you the same question that every swimming podcast in the history of the universe asks to start out. What is your history in the sport? How'd you get into it? Why are you currently on a pool deck still? Let's hear it.
Okay, so I started swimming when I was a freshman in high school. I kind of just stumbled into the sport. I ended up getting really wrapped up in the camaraderie of my guys' high school team my freshman year, and it caused me to stick with it. I graduated. I went to the University of North Dakota and swam there for a year, and then I transferred to Washita Baptist University, where I completed out my collegiate career. I graduated with it. Yeah, shout out. And was part of an excellent breaststroke group that included none other than Coach Polano himself. So
Washita Breaststroke University, baby.
I know it might come back. You never know. Basically, after that, I moved to Columbia, Missouri, and was taking graduate courses in history. And I decided to get involved some way, somehow in swimming. And the head age group coach there, Sarah Smith, she took me under her wing and brought me to the pool deck one day and said, this might be a thing that you want to do. So through her, I got involved in Columbia Swim Club, started coaching age group there. And then I also became the assistant high school coach under Laura Wacker. And I spent 3 years in Columbia, eventually becoming the dude that coached every kid in Columbia, all of the age groups under Sarah Smith. And then I was the head high school coach there before I left. It was a wonderful time where I got to experience coaching at all different levels, from creating a summer league team with Sarah Smith all the way up to, Olympic trials level athletes with Gary Galbraith in the senior groups. After that, I came to Drury University as a graduate assistant, worked with Doug Schrank, Brian Reynolds, and then I also am an age group coach here at SPA still, because as cool as it is to coach really fast kids, I also like to teach kids just how to swim. And it's really, really fun to watch them get excited in practice every day. And I firmly believe that there's not a whole lot different from an 8-year-old and a 22-year-old. They just want to get excited about swimming. And, if I can be a part of that journey, I think that's pretty awesome.
So, Zach, you're going to be able to double dip into a couple different topics here, but we're going to focus. I know. We're going to focus almost exclusively on the college side of things. So a couple different things we're going to discuss here. How are you going to handle things like lane space and training space? What are your university's policies when it comes to equipment and travel to competitions, things like locker room access? So let's dive into that first one, which is probably what every coach has their wheels spinning on, is how are we going to make this work? Drury's a big program with not a small pool, but it's not going to be a Louisville or a Bloomington where it's 24 lanes long. How do you guys plan to maximize the space given, and what sort of policies and procedures are you putting in for social distancing?
Yeah, so to kind of set the scene, our pool here at Drury University, we have a 10-lane, 25-yard pool. We have a pretty sizable deck space around it, so that gives us some opportunities to do some other stuff as well. Team-wise, we usually have around 55 to 60 kids on our team. So even in a normal year, we would not have everybody on deck swimming at the same time. In a normal year, we run a morning practice that's split between one group in the weight room and one group in the water. And in the evening, we run two groups, a 1 to 3 and a 3 to 5. So, what we have begun to embark upon this year, I believe we have a team of 57 in the water this next year, is we are taking an in depth look at class schedules and we are seeing how we can group the students together in a way that makes sense training wise and asking ourselves when are those groups able to go and have a dedicated 2 hour chunk of time that they can be in the pool. So we are not necessarily looking to double down on what we've done in previous years where we have to say, all right, we're doing mornings and afternoons. They're going to be at this time and we're just going to run later or we're going to run earlier or we're just going to have to figure it out on the fly. It's, we might have practices more or less going through until, maybe 9 o'clock in the morning where we have an ability to go even later with our morning practices. We might have people doing singles in the middle of the day where they have time that's available. We might have people that are doing a quote unquote traditional practice schedule that's a morning practice and an afternoon practice. But we are really thinking about this in terms of how can we group like athletes together and possibly give them more of what they need through the addition of space. So we really want to try and think about this through a lens of, how can we give more to student athletes in this time period rather than saying we're taking away pool time. It's, I've got a group of 3 people in the water right now, which would be awesome. And they're all going to go through this set that's dedicated towards this very narrow range of events that they really want to swim. So that's our general idea is we're going to try and do our best to find small groups where they lie and then construct weeks of practices for these small groups as they go through. So realistically, we're not planning on having anybody or any one group in the water have more than like 10 to 15 people at a time, which is awesome. That completely abides by 2 people per lane, which, we think is going to end up being like the gold standard. And we want to kind of set the bar there. And we think the only thing in between us doing that and everybody else is that, we as a coaching staff are willing and able to kind of tell our athletes that we're here for them. We're going to sit on deck and we're going to coach you. We're going to be here for you through this time period. And we want to partner with you through your swimming still, even though we're having to make a lot of considerations. As far as bolts on the ground or boots on the ground, what our pool setup looks like is we go 2 to a lane, 1 at each end. Every day we have all of the swimmers march in and they file into opposite sides of our pool through, we have a backdoor access. So we are able to open up those doors and hold them open. So we have like contactless entry exit of the building. So they basically come in, they know to go to their chair with a mask on. And they sit in that chair. We take their temperature. We do a symptoms check for them and their household. And then once we're ready to go for practice, that's when we take off our masks and we go to work. After they're done, they basically go back to their chair, put their mask back on, get dressed, they go, and then we bleach down the pool bench. We have about 15 minutes in between each and every practice. So we have about 5 minutes to bleach and kind of let the pool set. So that's what the day to day looks like here at Drury. But we really plan on having, lots of small practices run throughout the day, and using the small practice setting to, really create a more intensely focused environment on what a few kids need rather than what a bigger group even needs.
Rock on. So in my neck of the woods here in Texas, we actually have to do daily logging of things like temperature and any sort of symptoms, and have kids fill out a waiver form every day. And it's not like I'm going to die and I'm not going to sue you waiver. It's just I'm agreeing to the fact that I'm not showing any of these symptoms. Is that something that DU is trying to make all of the athletic programs file as well?
We don't know about all of the other athletics programs, but we know that we do something like that. So we basically have a gigantic spreadsheet. It's got every person that is going to have access regularly to that pool. What we do is when they walk in, we go through that symptom check. The CDC has like a cool little infographic that we have laminated on the back of a clipboard, and we basically hold it up to the kid and we go, "Hey, do you have any of these symptoms? Does anybody in your household have any of these symptoms?" And they, obviously if they're here, they tell us no. And then we take their temperature and then we write their temperature down. So everything is tracked. As of right now, we've been in this pool for almost a month, so we have a month worth of data on it, which is great. So that is absolutely something that we do, and we're going to continue that for the foreseeable future. We think that is probably one of our best ways to kind of keep track of everybody, and I think that's going to be around for a while.
I'm going to agree with you on that too. Texas just came out today and they said that football is going to be moved back a month, and for all the other sports, we're going to have to continue to comply with all of the policies and procedures that we were all kind of hoping and expecting might go away. But I think you're right; it's here to stay, and who knows how many seasons worth of data we're going to have.
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody knows anything about me, I'm all about the spreadsheets, and I'm all about having a month worth of data. So
Me too.
I am 100% on board with that system. So let's talk equipment, Zach. Traditionally, most colleges don't have like a communal bin of equipment that everybody kind of goes through and grabs things that fit their fancy. But I know that a lot of college programs use the same types of equipment like power racks or stretch cords or any sort of stretching material in the mornings before practices. Do you guys have policies and procedures in place for how/if those equipment pieces can be shared?
Yes, so we do. So from the athletic department, and we were the first people to kind of bring this up to our athletic department because I think we are the only type of people who have access to the equipment like we do here. So we have power racks, we have buckets, we're a team that really uses like weight belts, socks, and parachutes a lot as well, and we check that stuff out to swimmers sometimes. But obviously, given the way in which a lot of the athletes left campus, a lot of that stuff just stuck around. We weren't able to kind of check stuff out to go home with. We as a Division II school were at the NCAA meet when everything was canceled, and a lot of them had just like left stuff around deck. They didn't have their things with them, so as our athletes were on campus or are coming back to campus, they don't have their stuff, or especially within our power equipment kind of spectrum of things. So what we basically have said to them is that, if you're using a power rack, I am moving your weight. I will come and put the power rack in front of your lane. I will move your weight and adjust it as I see fit. Once we are done using it, you throw it all up there. After the conclusion of practice, I will, or you guys don't touch the power racks, you don't mess with them. I will bleach them down and then remove them from pool deck. The same goes for parachutes, drag socks, and weight belts and stretch cords. Because if we use them, you use them, you touch them, you have your own set. Once you are done, you set it on pool deck in your lane space. And then after practice is done, you leave your equipment there, and I will come around and I will bleach them, and then let them set for about 5 to 10 minutes in between every practice.
So when you say bleach them, is that, just straight Clorox? Is that the Lysol Clorox spray? Is that a special concoction of Zach's own making? What does that look like?
It is actually, we brought in a third-party organization through our club team. So our senior club coach here, Thomas Bauman, he went out and sought help from a third-party organization. I can't remember their name off the top of my head. And also benefit to us, we have a large regional medical center here called Cox Health. Their infectious disease specialist, his daughter swims for our club team. So both of those guys were able to advise our entry back into the pool program and our procedures. So it is some sort of special mixture, and it is supposed to kill on contact. So it's kind of harsh. I'm not gonna lie. I also like that we have to wear masks at all time when we're on the pool deck, because I don't necessarily want to be breathing that stuff in. But it has been approved to to kill COVID-19. And we are super thankful for the involvement, everybody that we've been able to talk with about our reentry plan. I know that it's made things a lot more clear cut for us when we can have a dude that it's his job to know what's going on, and we can just send him an email and he'll text me back about it. And that's really great. It's great to have a guy like Dr. Drop in that corner.
My other life that's not swim coaching, I work for the tech department for a school district, and we hosted a large tech conference this past summer still, and we were able to do it social distancing. And now we're getting all of our devices back from students and from staff members. And we are actually using like the highly concentrated Barbasol, like the things that like barber drops comb on the ground and puts into the little glass container. So that's our, I've got that in my back pocket if we need to use that. So let's talk locker rooms. Do you guys have a policy for that right now? I know that in Texas that has been opened up, that now student athletes can use locker rooms. Unfortunately for my school district at this time, they're not allowing it until we have more proper procedures in place. What are you guys doing when it comes to locker room access?
Currently, we do not have locker room access. We are working on a plan about what that might look like. Certainly because we're having such small groups, I think we will be pretty okay with it. We should only have a few people in there. However, half of our locker room is open to the public. So basically the way our locker rooms work is that we have a shower room, a public use locker room, and then we have the team locker room, which is all connected through one central hallway. And our team locker room just has a passcode door to it. So it's not so much as we are worried about our own athletes going in there 2 to 3 at a time and taking care of business and getting out. We're worried about general student population having access to those facilities, how we are going to make sure that we can get everybody in and out safely. Being an open campus, any student has an ID card currently and can swipe to get into our rec center. We have classes that are hosted out of the bottom floor of here, and we're trying to figure out how we can lock down those doors and redirect some students to other facilities should they need to use it.
That makes sense. Yep. And we're kind of in the same boat with my team. We operate out of a YMCA, which is a public locker room. And I know that I can trust my kids to follow procedures. I just don't know that I can trust Jimbo Fisher to. Yeah. Jimbo Fisher is an actual person, so that was a bad made up name. Like, I can't trust the general public to continue with those policies as well. So, how about travel to competitions? Our alma mater had the great fortune of having a rival school across the street, so it's not like we had to bus over to Henderson State for a meet. But for Drury, you guys have Missouri State in town. But other than that, you're going to have to do some traveling for competitions. Have you guys thought through the travel restrictions that may be in place in terms of number of people in a vehicle, the social distancing inside of a vehicle? Yes. What do you think?
Yes. So we have not gotten any word on what competitions will look like in the fall, specifically some of our bigger competitions. Obviously, our schedule kicks off with the Show Me Showdown, which has 12 teams at it. We haven't gotten official word with that, but we anticipate that that's probably not going to go through. And that being said, most of our other competitions throughout the fall semester are pretty local. We duel Missouri State. We have our Drury Invitational, which we don't yet know how or if those will be allowed by our conference. But that doesn't necessitate a whole lot of travel for us specifically. Now, when we go thinking about where we're going to travel, typically we go somewhere over fall break. This coming fall semester, we were planning on going to SMU for our midseason invitational. We've floated ideas of buses plus vans going in some sort of platooning factor. That way we keep smaller groups that are isolated as we travel to different locations. And I think that could be something that we do implement. I also don't necessarily know if we are if we're going to be able to do lots of those travel meets. So once those things kind of get lined out, we'll probably develop very concrete plans and very concrete procedures. It's just that we've got our ideas. We just don't necessarily know the frameworks that we're going to be required to implement them
And I don't think anyone does. I
in.
know
Yeah.
that for my dual meet schedule coming up this season, I have 6, and those first 3 dual meets, I'm planning on being inter squad. Like, I'm not inviting anybody to them. We're going to try to figure out our own system, and we're going to try to coordinate and organize with our YMCA that we have policies in place. And then if at that point maybe things have eased up, we can start to invite other teams or continue the invitations that we've extended. But you're right,
Hmm.
for those big dual meets or for those big invitationals, how are we
Hmm.
going to social distance, 30, 40
Yes.
teams? It's a great question, and I look forward to a concrete answer. Unfortunately,
Hmm.
I don't know that that's going to be a
Hmm.
fun answer to get. We had a head coaches meeting with our superintendent the other day, and his words to us were, "Those decisions will likely be made for you." And
Hmm.
it hurt to hear, but it's understandable. So
Yes.
let's talk about, specifically for you as a college coach, what is recruiting going to look like during this process? If you don't know anything about Zach, Zach is the recruiting extraordinaire. I've never seen him work harder or more passionately than when he has a Ukrainian person that is on the deep dark web that he's able to find, and like a diamond in the rough. What is this going to look like for you guys?
So, um, right now, Drury University is kind of in a weird spot, and we're trying to figure out how we can get through the international recruiting situation that we're in. Obviously, if you've been keeping track of this, just Swim News, Swim Swam, publishing stuff about you know ICE creating prohibitions on international students going online at various points in the semester, various U.S. embassies closing or not processing visa requests for probably the last few months. It's been kind of a crazy period of time when we're trying to keep everybody calm while also on the opposite end of that being an advocate for our incoming students. We have done everything from lobbying local authorities, city councils, boards, all that sort of stuff, into alumni, all the way up into our congressional representatives, to make sure that we can help these kids get to campus. Um, but that is kind of where we're at right now in trying to get kids to campus. Now, recently, we've had a lot of good things happen in the international recruiting scene that's going to allow a lot of our student athletes to get to campus relatively on time. During the start of school, we're working on ways in which they can engage in on campus activities while still sitting their quarantine through virtual means, and I think that's awesome. But we're still trying to figure this thing out. I know that me and our international support specialist and our international recruiting recruiter always are talking about how we can figure this out, because we do represent a significant proportion of our international students on campus. I think we have 23 student athletes on our team of 55 approximately that aren't from the U.S. As far as going forward, given we can get these kids on campus, uh, recruiting has kind of morphed more into my ball game for everybody else that's trying to recruit domestically. Most of my work is in international recruiting. Therefore, I do almost everything virtually. I talk on Zoom, Skype, have phone calls, messaging kids in all different ways. And many coaches are finding out that they're having to just do that stuff with domestic kids now. And that you are trying to find ways to get them to understand what the experience of Drury University is like, even when we don't have the real ability to do an official visit. And I think, that feeds right into my creative wheelhouse. Um, I know that by and large, I spend a lot of time on video calls and voice and regular calls with prospective student athletes, and I expect that most other coaches are experiencing that call volume as well. Because these kids, without being able to get here and sit on campus and see it, they want to get to know you as your coach. What is it going to be like? How do you treat me? And I think that is going to bring recruiting away from the pony show, of getting them onto campus and getting them all hyped up to, what is this relationship actually going to look like when you get onto campus and you're in December and things are hard. What is that coach going to be like? What kind of energy are they bringing to you every day? And I think that is probably going to be a new style of recruiting that's going to require a lot of coaches to be really, really honest with their incoming students. Um, Outside of that, we aren't seeing a whole lot of dip in interest in recruiting, which I think is great. We get messages all the time, for kids that are interested. It helps that Drury is unique. We have some unique academic programs here that automatically attract student athletes, and we have a unique team. We are one of those teams that can reasonably say we're going to go contend for a national title every single year. And that's going to attract a certain type of person. And that does help recruit itself a little bit. That doesn't mean that we aren't out there working to try and find the exact right people that we want to bring onto campus, but it does help a lot. So, but right now we are thinking that this will change recruiting. In its grand scheme of things, we are seeing a few more people commit earlier this cycle around. And the commitments are a little bit more diverse in the caliber of swimming, which is an interesting thing for me to note. You're not seeing just schools like Cal in Texas get really early commitments. You're seeing lots of schools get really, really early commitments. And I think that's going to change the recruiting landscape. Also, the things that are going to change how we do things is, currently Division 1, I believe, is sitting in a dead period that's been extended. Depending on what Division 1 ends up doing, that will kind of affect us, not necessarily a downstream way, but typically we are kind of running a step behind in Division 2 stuff or in Division 2 recruiting, because we are recruiting on a more diverse platform. One of the primary differences between Division 1 and Division 2 schools is that we have less rules regarding what is and what is not a recruitable athlete. So we have more places to look than Division 1 schools. So we can be out there and be working with people on lots of different timelines. Therefore, our focus isn't solely focused on, class of 2021 finishing up here in the fall and then getting rolling on class of 2022, because we could still be working on kids coming in at semester. We could still be working on kids of 2021 all the way into the spring. And it just is a measure of where we're finding those kids. So it's not as linear a process here. But we believe that people committing verbally so early to Division 1 institutions will affect us in some way. We just haven't quite figured out what that's going to mean yet. And then we have like the idea that a few people are deciding to take gap years, which is something that we at the Division 2 level are very familiar with. We get lots of those kids who, take gap years, who just want some extra time to focus on swimming, or go to school for a year and train with their club team at home, or maybe they popped into the sport late and just need a little bit more time in the oven. And, that's something that we find ourselves really comfortable in, because that stuff happens very frequently at the Division 2 level.
So you talked about the gap years from the high school kids coming in. What about, have you heard anything about college kids, especially in a newly minted Olympic year? Have you heard anything about big time swimmers at the D1, D2, even D3 level that are going to take a redshirt season, where they don't want to be limited by the policies in place at their college program. So maybe they want to have a little bit more freedom to operate in their own bubble.
We have some kids who are on unique degree paths here at Drury, whether they're seeking a terminal master's program here, who have talked about it. And I think that is a reasonable conversation to have. They've already got a fifth year built in, and they think that it might be in their best interest to just go ahead and say, hey, maybe I'll just train this year. Maybe that's something that I want to do. I have heard of a few people saying, you know what, I'm gonna take this gap year. I'm gonna take a year off. Now in Division 2, you can technically fully remove yourself from school, I believe, and after you fully remove yourself from school, your eligibility is frozen. So you can take that gap year, and it won't necessarily impede you in your Division 2 eligibility. So it's just that not necessarily a lot of swimmers are looking to take that gap year. And certainly the ones that already did it last year, they're not necessarily looking to do another one, or maybe their program isn't as interested in letting them take another gap year. So I think that this year, or this time around, there might be a few people who completely remove themselves from school or go part time in an attempt to kind of meander through NCAA rules. Currently, that's only something that we've lightly discussed with a few athletes here at Drury, just because it works for them. It is something that could be in their best interest, and that's what we have at heart. And I don't necessarily think that's going to be a huge thing at the Division 2 level, but there could be a few people that do fit into that category. I know that we have a few swimmers that are thinking that 2021 Tokyo Olympics is a viable opportunity for them. And we have discussed it with all of those swimmers about what our plan is for them, training wise, how we're going to go through the season with that big goal in mind, that capital D dream goal. And we want to make that a possibility for them. And we just want them to come in fully informed about what it's going to look like. Because we don't want them to come in thinking one thing and be blindsided by something that comes in from right field. So that's how we're approaching that topic. We think it might be a thing. It's not really going to impact us a whole lot here at Drury, but we think there are going to be a few people at the Division 2 level who might end up in that category.
Okay, so I've got a couple of those were our warm up activities. Okay, so we're about to hit some red blue energy systems on the next questions. As much as we as coaches like to think our kids are in love with the process of swimming, we know that at the end of the day, the end of season meet has a huge impact on our kids' motivation levels. And you discussed briefly, and I remember texting you when this was happening, your kids were at the meet. Like, you were at the show when word came down that DT Nationals was being canceled. How do you as a coach engage potentially apathetic swimmers where they know, kids are smart, they know that there's potential for an end of season meet not being a traditional end of season meet. And for a lot of your kids, they've lived that and they know how it feels and they know how deflating it can be. How can you as a coach engage those kids to be focused on growth and be focused on performance and improvement while there's this looming doubt that clouds over the pool deck?
Yeah, I think that is a really good question. Simply because for most of the questions we get asked as coaches about what is to come, the answer that we can give is, I don't know. But we as coaches always want to try and get athletes to be moving forward some way, somehow. So one of the big things that we did at Drury for all of our college kids is we basically, after we departed from campus, we got on a Zoom call and we were like, look, we left campus so quickly and in such disarray. Everybody could just shoot off whenever they wanted to. We couldn't meet. We couldn't sit down all in one room. They closed down all our athletic facilities, so we had nowhere to really go. So we didn't have unified equipment. We didn't have really a whole lot of people with any water access. We didn't have, a group plan to follow. And I think in many ways that served to our benefit, because when we left them to their own devices and then we engaged them as a coach one on one with an athlete, we were able to identify things that they wanted to do that they felt made them better in swimming. Because everybody who joins the team here wants to be better at swimming. And when we left them with their own devices, with whatever they had, we were able to come up with something that was engaging for them, that they wanted to do, and that they could do consistently. And that was the thing that was going to root them back to the team, whether that was, I have a 10-yard round pool in my backyard that I'm going to mess around in. And this is what I'm doing, Zach. Or, I am going to go run. I'm going to do this training plan and I want you to look over it. Or, we literally had one kid who, he is one of our boys that lifts 5 days a week. He built himself a squat rack and then made himself plates out of a tree that he cut down, and was lifting in his garage and would send us videos of it.
That is the most Rocky IV thing that I've ever heard of.
I know. It was awesome. Because what we found out is that everybody wants to get better. It's just that right now we got to go about it in our own way. So what we as a coaching staff really wanted to do is we wanted to just try and fuel their fire in whatever direction it was taking them. If they want to run, let's go run. Let's figure out how you can get better at running. Let's figure out how that's going to play into your swimming. Or if you want to lift trees in your garage, let's figure out how that plays into your swimming. If you want to do push-ups, let's figure out how we can do this better. If you want to do yoga, let's direct you to some resources. If you've got stuff, let me know what it is and we can start talking about things. And, all of that got to transpire in the span of about a month and a half. And that was awesome. We got to have those discussions with our swimmers. They got to come to us kind of one-on-one. We got to post stuff on all of our Facebooks and social medias that we use with the swimmers in private, so that they can kind of like get ideas from us while we get ideas about what they want from them. And that was a super important experience for the team, to learn to get better on the things that they can really get committed to. And I think that has yielded a lot of results as they come back to the water now, because, we've been swimming for about 2 months. We started out in some outdoor facilities and we've moved indoor over the last month. And, the swimmers, we found are doing really, really well. They have been able to bounce back. They've been resilient, and they've even come back in great shape, stronger, faster, all that sort of stuff. And we didn't have to be there to hold their hand the whole time. These
Isn't that
guys,
awesome?
I know, it's like people want to be better if you just let them.
And it's almost one of those things that, as a coach, you expect them to not want that. And I've seen the same thing with a good chunk of my kids, that in the absence of coaches, their desire increased. And I was like, oh, I don't want my athletic director to find out about this. I don't want him to know I've been holding kids back.
Yeah. But I mean, most of the time, when you think about it, coaching is, you want to, at least how I see it at the college level, at little kids, it's a little different. Because little kids, sometimes they don't know how to do swimming. And I literally had a 9-year-old girl tell me that she forgot what breaststroke was the other day. And I was like, you've been swimming for like 2 years now. Don't make me look bad. But, most of what I believe college swimming is I'm creating a pathway for these kids or for these college humans to just go down. And once I got that pathway up that directs them in the way of fast swimming, this is what it looks like. My goal is to just go to the end of that pathway and cheer. I am going to encourage them to get as far down that pathway as possible. And that's how I view that relationship. So, basically what we did was we took that principle and we moved it to, what do you want to be good at and why? And then we basically gave them some framework, and I moved myself all the way to the end of that pathway and started yelling for them. Because that's what we're here to do. By and large, if you give them something that they want to eat up, they'll keep eating. Because kids are really hungry to get better.
That's awesome. Okay, so I think that this COVID shutdown and the amount of time we lost made coaches very aware of how precious time is and how precious the opportunities that we create are. What are, if you were to say, and I know that you spoke in great detail on you guys have plans in place to not reduce time, but to create time. But if you were to have to focus in your coaching on a few strategies or skills that you believe are the most worthy of your program's time and effort, what do you think those skills and strategies would be? What type of training do you think would be kind of the key ingredient that your program needs to have?
So I work with the sprinters here at Drury, and by and large, or a good way to preface this is when COVID-19 hit, I ended up getting linked into a Zoom talk series with a bunch of other coaches from all over the nation, of which I felt definitely the least qualified to be in that room. And basically, what we did is we all put down our weekly schedules, and we put down like what we're focused on and our volumes and how we're integrating different types of equipment into all of our stuff. And at the end of that entry period where we got all of our stuff put down, I go back and I look at all of these elite tier programs, and I look at how much they're doing, and I look at some of the stuff that they're doing, and I'm like, wow, I'm really low volume. So that is something that I've been thinking about significantly as I'm going into this year. Because although I am super low volume, I believe in lots of intensity swimming, lots of race pace swimming, lots of power work, lots of tempo work. Because I am a coach that believes in we need to create the habit of racing. We need to cultivate those skills first and foremost. So as far as my heavy hitting skills, what I have been focused on for about the last month is cultivating power. We've been doing some very long, slow power progressions with resistance, mainly focused on parachutes and weight belts. That way, we are able to add very light incremental loading into our fast swimming. And I think that has shown a lot of benefit to our swimmers. A lot of them have really responded well. We have one new swimmer who joined us over the summer, and she has seen a lot of improvement in this month alone in her ability to execute, elite 25s. But what I have noticed is that my swimmers' ability to do some of the things that they did, in the winter right before we rested, they're not as able to kind of go after longer, intense efforts, 50s, 75s, even at 100 pace. And that is certainly an issue that I think, I'm seeing that we need to grapple with as we come into the year. And that does mean that I think we need to do a little bit more volume work. I need to take it a little bit more slowly and pushing how far we're going fast. I believe firmly that we just need to start stacking on lots of 25s at elite speed. And, if we can get more and more yards at critical speed, slowly we're going to build up the ability to string more of those together. So, really learning to find ways to increase the volume of critical speed that we're doing in practice is really important to me. That's going to be a big skill and strategy that we're going to use here at Drury. And then, really taking the time that we have now and doing long power progressions so that we can really work on strength, which is for sprinters, the bedrock of short course yards sprinting. That is something that, we are taking full advantage of now, since we do have access to all of our power equipment. And we have people on campus that are ready and willing to kind of take it slow and get back into those things.
Awesome. Okay. My last question, and it might be an answer you don't have an answer to, slash
Mm-hmm.
your department might not have an answer to. What is the appropriate action after the first positive case on your team? What will be yours, Doug's, and Brian's response?
Okay, so what we would do is we are identifying, we have the master chart. If we do it in the summer, everybody practices in the same group. We notate down the lanes or we have spots for every swimmer. We notate down the spots that they're swimming in. Right now, what we would probably do is we would look at where that swimmer was swimming, and then we would quarantine the swimmers in the immediate vicinity of that swimmer. So we would go probably one lane right, one lane left, and then the opposite swimmer in the lane. So the swimmers that are in the immediate area. And we would quarantine those swimmers or until they got a test result back that was negative. Otherwise, we would just tell them to go chill for 2 weeks in their room. Once we start school, that changes some things. What we would do is we have that platooning measure in effect. We have all of those little small practices that are occurring throughout the day. And we are going to track who is at those small practices with a gigantic spreadsheet. We're going to be noting who is in contact with whom as we go through our week. Basically, we would contact trace through those, and we would begin quarantining small groups until they get positive or negative, or they get a test result back. So once we get into the actual school year, we're really relying on the platooning factor to minimize the amount of people that, a possible infected case could come into contact with, because our group sizes are going to be so small. That way, we don't have to quarantine the entire team, because we are trying our best to keep them into small enough contact. However, if we get into a situation where it's a living situation, we're going to be looking at outside factors too. So we're going to be looking into swimmers in same classes, same living situations. So, we are committed to saying that, if we get a positive test, that person is going to have to go sit 2-week quarantine. And until symptoms subside, and then we are going to contact trace through their living situation and their platoon to practice group, and make those groups sit and get tested as well. But we believe that platooning is probably team's best bet on keeping more kids in the water. That's one thing that our local expert has told us is the smaller the groups that you can create and the more regular those groups are, the better protected you are against it wiping through your entire team. So that is the nugget of truth that I think that we're really going to try to hold through all the way until we see the end of this one.
That's really smart. And college coaches are going to have a more arduous challenge than club and high school, because you guys have kids with those living situations. They're in the same apartment. They're in the same dorm. They are a community, and it's no longer I go home and I'm no longer exposed. Okay, Zach, you have given coaches all over the place, college, club, high school, a lot to consider, a lot to think about, and a lot of ideas. What blanket advice would you give to coaches, swimmers, and programs as we fight through these adverse conditions?
I think we need to always be striving to meet the swimmers halfway. We need to take some time to understand everything that they've gone through. We as coaches think we have it hard sometimes, because we haven't been able to go to the pool. We haven't been able to be with the kids. We didn't get championship seasons. We didn't get blah 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 blah. But we need to remember that we have on deck kids that had their entire seasons pulled from them. We have, I know that we had like our team captains this past year. They had their seasons pulled out from underneath of them. Some of them were swimming super fast going into their final NCAAs. The morning that NCAAs was canceled, we broke a team record in the 400 medley relay. And the boys were looking forward to that evening and doing something that nobody who had ever been on this campus had done before. And we need to remember that these swimmers really lost a part of what they feel like they're about. And, those effects are going to linger. We as coaches need to come to them with a little bit of grace and compassion when we realize that things are going to be really hard this next year, because it's not going to be as hard on us, because there are going to be kids to coach. We're going to get to, be on deck, and we're going to get to be in communion with each other in many different ways. But, the thing that many of our kids look forward to is getting in the pool, and swimming out their day and swimming towards their goals. And not everybody is going to be able to do that, and not everybody has been able to do that. And I think that is going to weigh heavily on a lot of swimmers coming into this year. And I think we as coaches need to remember that. And we need to remember that, these kids are still coming back for more, and they really want it. They want to be here, and it is just a very difficult time to be an athlete. And, remembering to be compassionate to those swimmers is going to be really important in this next year, definitely, and forever.
And forever. Zach, thank you so much. And forever. Till the end.
Forever. Till the end. All right.
Zach, thank you so much for coming on today. We appreciate you, and have a great one.
All right. You too, Jason.